Well, God bless you. I'm so glad that we were able to connect here on this medium. I had recorded the video. This is Pastor Omar A. Muhammad, and I am coming to do some corrective work. You know, sometimes you have to go back and check what you said. Now, a few weeks ago, last week, in fact, there was an announcement made that Juneteenth was being made a national holiday. And for some reason, that information disturbed me. It disturbed me greatly. And I found I had, and what I went on to say was that you can keep your holiday, give me something more tangible, something like repayment or payment on the free labor that was taken off of my ancestors, our ancestors. And although I do know that there was something right to that, but then there was also something wrong with that. And in part, it had to do with me speaking about the politics of Juneteenth and not necessarily understanding the fullness of Juneteenth. It was my friend Babu Blakes who sent me something. He's gracious, my gracious friend. He's the scholar, MC, author of the L book. I don't know the exact name of it. It's going to come back. But I just wanted to honor Brother Babu and gently giving me something. He passed on something to me to this. Let me see if I can share my screen with you. What he did, he passed on to me. He passed on to me this video. And the video had to do with, here, watch this. This is the video he passed on. See if I can expand it. And don't know if you can hear it. I can hear it, but let's see. This is my first time trying one of these live Zoom, so maybe I should have practiced way before I got here. But here I am now. I think it may.
That's fun, right?
Yeah.
It's an expensive thing.
Yeah.
This is my first
And then
time
we
trying one of
have
these
some
live Zoom,
So we need
maybe
a
I
holiday
should practice way before I got here.
because it was, normally is that this was the, that's fun, right?
It's an expensive thing.
Yeah.
Not the wrong thing. Quite nasty. The last dog.
So right now, I'm hearing myself on the other line. And so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to go to a platform I'm more familiar with, and I'll come back to this. But while I'm here, let me go ahead and do this, y'all. I'm going to pause it because it's already live and it's already running. I can do some things without doing it this way. If you can hear me clearly, I want to do it like this. Because it's already live and it's already running. I can do some things without doing it this way. If you can hear me clearly, I want to do it like that. I'm going to share. And I could go back to turn it down, I think. Now, can you hear me? I hope that you can. It looks like it's registering here. So the issue was that I had come on and said, my heart out, dressed up real nice and wanted to talk about this whole thing about Juneteenth. And what was disturbing me, it was because I didn't look at it in the fullness. Now, there are some teachers who present Juneteenth in this way. We've talked about 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, 2.5 years after that, in Galveston, Texas, 19, somebody named General Granger had read a report said, you are now free. And I want to encourage you, now that you're free, but I do want you to stay in your place. Don't go from here and work for wages. Now, this is 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. It seemed that there was some type of situation in which the Union Army collaborated with the Southern crop growers, slaveholders, to finish off their crop. And so this 2.5 year delay of the information to these particular descendants of American slaves caused there to be a problem. And I was like, why did they do this? Why did the present administration, President you know his name, and Kamala. I'm trying Joe Biden and Kamala. I don't watch this show like I didn't watch the Trump show. However, I do. I was kind of disturbed. I said, now we need some more substantive change. We need to deal with some policing reform. We need to deal with some other things. And then there's a long-term thing that comes from the very act of slavery that our foreparents did not get paid for their 200 years of slavery in the United States, 400 years of slavery altogether. But they didn't get paid for it. That was free labor in our nation was founded on that, what they call the original sin of the United States of America, and that's slavery, the original sin. And as a result of this sin of this missing the mark of pure love. Sin means missing the mark of love, pure love. They weren't loving on the descendants. They weren't loving on the Africans who they brought to America to work their field. No, their kind of love was the kind of love that, we can do without. They were seeing a situation they can enslave these people with these melanated skin, easy to track them, able to watch over them. They can enslave them and put them to hard labor, and they did. Now, they were businessmen, because we have to remember slavery is a business. Slavery is a business, right? And so as a result of slavery being a business, the business owners who are doing this mercantile having to do with cotton and sugar and all these other type of things, they were like, here's some labor, we can do it. And instead of buying slaves, they bought the first crop. But instead of buying slaves, what they did was they raped into existence another, I think, the newest family of humanity, which is what? The descendants of American slaves. The American Negro, some people call this. African Americans, which is a totally mistake for us to be calling ourselves African Americans. President Obama, just make it quick, President Obama is an African American, African father, American mother, African American. But for us, we are descendants of American slaves, and the slave holders raped us into existence. There are some Nigerians exactly the color that I am, are similar. So it might not necessarily be because of the mixture of the blood, but I definitely have some of that slave master blood in me. And I suspect that many of the descendants of American slaves had that slave master blood in them, because what they wanted to do was to keep it labor. They give birth to their own slaves, and really these slaves were now their sons and daughters. These slaves were now the brothers and sisters of the slave holders' children. Yes. And for some reason, some kind of weirdness happened in which that, these people came into existence. So many of us, now we are here. And, it's in our blood. That's why I'm so glad to get the DNA. There was an original attempt to destroy the paper trail of slavery, keeping us as chattel slaves, and it really wasn't working out for that. But at the end of the day, there was also something going on with at the end of the day, there was something going on with this whole system that they had. They have all these people. Some people said they had people who were in the big house, they were, and they did a lot of that kind of stuff based on what was the complexion of the person. Some of these people who were in the big house were actually the children of Massa, the slave holder. And they're in this house, and it's like some crazy stuff going on. Like you're wondering, what is really going on? So they're their children. And the majority of us so-called descendants of American slaves, which is different than the African American, which they try to make us use as a terminator, because they actually basically erased the concept of slavery. I took on that term because I didn't want to be equated to slavery. Up until that time, I was cool. I was not cool with slavery. I was just like, slavery was something I didn't really want to study. I watched Roots, of course, and learned about slavery. But it was just something that was just a thing that turned out to be an act of shame, a shame for me. I was ashamed of slavery. Have you ever been ashamed of slavery? I was ashamed of slavery. And here's the part that I was ashamed of slavery was, and I did not even understand that. I was ashamed of slavery because I was taking the slave holder's perspective on slavery. And since I was taking the slave holder's perspective on slavery, I was ashamed of it. And I didn't want to remember it. I wanted to think of that something as a past. But one day I was hanging out with some people called the Descendants of American Slave group, and they were talking about things like, we ought to be proud of slavery because our slave ancestors endured the dehumanization of their being and of their character, and they still came out on top. They still came out as winners. The thing is, I don't really understand the fullness of that, but I do understand this, my friend, that slavery was the work that our ancestors did to endure to get us here to this free state of being was a wonderful, wonderful work. And as a result of that wonderful, wonderful work, I'm thankful that I am a descendant of American slave, and I'm not ashamed to say it, because I know that there was some great strength to take all that craziness, all that dehumanization, all that degradation, all that hatred, all the things that came upon our people and endure. It's amazing. And we being the descendants of American slaves who are economically, at least economically, way further down the line than our ancestors, our descendants of American slaves in the African, economically way down the line. And for the most part, educationally, we way down the line. Yes. And we give thanks for that, because they weren't taught to read, they weren't taught to write, they weren't taught to understand. They were kept in ignorance. They was given the idea about God and the Bible, but they didn't teach them from a perspective of the God of the Bible is the victor and character and the winner. He is the one who stands with the poor. Yes. The great I am that is identifies himself with the poor. And so that those people who have a theology that does not start with God being a God who looks out for the poor, takes care of the poor, and actually fights for the poor and liberates the poor, then we have a different kind of issue going on here. At any rate, let me stay on track with what I was going with this Juneteenth. So you have these descendants of American slaves. You have them in this modern time with 2021. And I was trying to figure out, are the Democrats just playing us? Can I be honest with you? Are the Democrats just playing us? I do remember, I know you may not like it and I might get taken off the air, but I do remember President Joe Biden calling us the predators. And I do remember that our Vice President Kamala Harris, although I'm very happy for her station in life, being the first woman in that high political office, vice president, and also a person of African American and Indian descent. All that's good, and really all that stuff played into them being elected. Because the backwash of all this, I'm going to for lack of a better, Trumpism and this nationalism which was hiding the white supremacist racist ideas that are inside that movement that was going on. With all this happening and all this going on, I was like, wait a minute. Do you think all of us are asleep? Or are we just all supposed to just forget all that kind of stuff? No, I didn't forget it. So are they in office? I'm glad that they're there, because that meant that there was a necessary change that had to happen so we can cut the tide of the white racist supremacist kind of ideas, nationalist ideas that was overflowing so much that it took over our capital. I mean, who would have thought that? But the condition of that particular political situation allowed that to come. So it had to end. And we have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Praise God. But I'm always wondering what's going on. So when I hear that now we have a national holiday called Juneteenth, and he's signing and talking about it's one of the most important things that he's ever done for his presidency, I'm like, okay, all right. I didn't think so. At least I didn't think at the time, because I had this General Grandis in Galveston, Texas, June 19th. And I didn't even know about Juneteenth until I was 30, because I was born in New Jersey and I grew up in the North. And this tended to be a Southern thing. So when I moved to Dallas, Texas to go to seminary, That's when I found out about Juneteenth. I was in Texas. And so I saw the red punch and I saw the watermelon. I could see that there was a good cultural thing, but I really, really didn't get it. I really, really, really did not get it. And what happened was, because I went off popping my mouth talking about the Juneteenth and popping in my mouth talking about the that I got to get something off my chest. You can keep your Juneteenth holiday, but give me more tangible understanding and recognition that our condition is changing, that the situation allow for a person to have his knee on George Floyd's neck and snuff him. I have never seen anything like that. And I wish I could unsee it, but sometimes we can't unsee. But I imagine the Lord wanted me to see, the God that I am that is wanted me to see that modern day lynching, so that I can have this righteous indignation in me and say, no, we're going to have to change the situation that allow for a George Floyd to be killed on the streets in broad daylight. Thank God for what I think was also a political decision to actually cause this brother who took his life to experience some loss or some restriction of his movements and rights because of what he had done. Thank God. But can you imagine, and this is why I think it's political, this is why I'm all kind of twisted up, because if in fact it is true that this decision to acquit, not to acquit him like they acquitted so many others, the decision not to acquit him was a political decision. Can you imagine what would have happened if in this present climate they had acquitted that dude? We already saw angry nationalists storm the Capitol. So was this another attempt, this holiday, another attempt to assuage the anger, righteous indignation in a people and causing for some things to happen? So in my seeing from that perspective, the political aspect of it, I missed the cultural aspect of it. And what this whole holiday was all about is the acknowledgement, the celebration of the fact that the people in Galveston, Texas, the human slaves who were in Galveston, Texas, who had been held for 2.5 extra years since the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, because of the connection they had with the Union soldiers and the sharecroppers to get their crops out of the field using that free labor. Okay, so that was a history. He reading this proclamation and telling people about it and telling y'all, you're free and you could do that. Now, there's something to that. And so Juneteenth became something. But what I did not realize was the cultural aspect. Let me say that again. I told you I was 30 years old when I discovered this in Dallas, Texas, that there was something called Juneteenth. But I am aware, having been a Christian now, at that time I was a Christian for maybe 10 years or so when I got to Dallas Theological Seminary. And the thing was that I realized that there was something called the watch night service. And I would be there at the watch night service at midnight in our churches, predominantly Black churches, which one and I did not see the connection. I knew, on North we would cook some black eyed peas. You had to have some black eyed peas, and for that evening, so that you can have that. I didn't know the fullness of it, but now I'm beginning to put it all together. What the watch night service was in the North was what Juneteenth was in the South or in Texas. It was an acknowledgement that we were no longer legally enslaved in the country, the native country of our birth. And then we could begin this process. So we're celebrating the end of that, at least as a legal thing in the South, because emancipation freed the slaves in the South. There's so much more to that. I'd like for you to check out some things. There's the African American Museum of Smithsonian. Why am I having a problem? The Smithsonian. The Smithsonian makes African Americans say, yeah, there's a museum in Washington, D.C. and you look up Juneteenth, there's some excellent knowledge there on that, and you connect that with the 13th Amendment. Please check that out. But it was my friend Babu Blakes who sent me in class with Carr, which is a large Bible study, Black history group going on. And they were talking about this Juneteenth. And the person, the doctor, I think her name is Hunter, who kind of like plays off Dr. Carr. Dr. Hunter was saying, like, should this Juneteenth, he's asking the question, should this Juneteenth be a national holiday? I mean, culturally, yeah, but should it be a national holiday? And so it was really strange that she grew up in the same environment that I grew up in. And it was just a really interesting thing that just happened, and that we both had this kind of question because of our origins, where we came from. But at the end of the day, I realized from a video of this class that my friend Babu Blakes, the scholar MC, L's Mirror is the name of the book that he co-authored with his son, L's Mirror. This brother sent me just kindly and gently. He was being cool with me on my response, and he didn't have like a strong response with me getting it off my chest. But then he sent me this class, and I watched the class, and I was like, oh wow. So there's sometimes when you do something, and you got to just go back and correct it. And I had to go back and correct this, and so it's 7 days after that time, so I didn't want to get like too much time to pass, and so I'm doing it live here on YouTube with all the kind of complications, but I still wanted to go forth and do this, and then I'll go and do another one, so you'll be able to check it out, and I'll post that one where I do like a classroom-like situation about it. Nevertheless, now that I see that the watch night service that I was connected to in the North, Baltimore in particular, and the Juneteenth celebration I became aware of in the South when I went to Dallas Theological Seminary are one and the same. It's the celebration of the emancipation of our people. And by our people, I'm referring to those descendants of American slaves. Yes, those people, melanated and mixed with our white brothers and sisters. At the end of the day, what's going on, this whole racism thing is stupid, because at the end of the day, it's a sibling rivalry. And the crazy thing that whatever our lighter skinned brothers was doing to us, they were really doing it to themselves. Until we actually get this whole slavery issue addressed, then we're going to still have some problems. We're going to still have these hot summers. We're going to still have situations. It's just not going to be done by signing in a national holiday. It's just not going to be done that way. It's going to have to be some real substantive work dealing with what slavery is, and then us coming together and realizing that we should be allies instead of against one another. Allies, because we're brothers and sisters. At the end of the day, we're cousins. We all, and I'm going to tell you this, and what I want to encourage everybody who's a descendant of American slave, I don't know how you're going to do it, but go ahead and get your DNA test, do all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if you want to use some company, but whatever company you use, get your DNA, and you'll find them in us, and I don't know about us and them, but there's definitely them in us. And since we're able to trace that, we may be able to trace the businesses and all those things that have the families at least that we're part of. Most of us still have our slave name. Malcolm X took his off and he became Malcolm X, and then eventually evolved to Al-Haji Malik al-Shabazz. And then my father did. He took his John 3X. He took his slave name off sometime, and then started a new people called the Muhammads. Yahya Bilal Aziz Muhammad. Give thanks and honor to my father, Yahya Bilal Aziz Muhammad, and his wife, Aziza Muhammad, pioneers in the freeing of the minds of people, especially through the Nation of Islam, Black Muslim community, cleaning up men, taking them out of prison and making them clean, upright business owners. And my mother was into what you call the civilization of the civilization of the woman. As she had been exposed to a lot of degradation, especially the Black woman, she had been exposed to so much. So we raised the dignity of both the man and the woman. And that was happening in the Nation of Islam. And that's what I was born into. Nevertheless, I thank God for that. But this whole thing is, at the end of the day, we are going to have to fix some things up. Juneteenth is good. Thank God for the holiday. Thank God for all those people who work for that. And we're going to celebrate our national holiday, and we're going to take our time back. Do me a favor, go check out Class with Carr. But I'm gonna tell you this: I think that you better check it out while it's online, because I had gotten a note saying that I put up some material that wasn't quite wasn't right. I was like wasn't fitting to the Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I didn't ignore it because I knew I didn't put up anything bad. But I realized when I was trying to look for this tape for you guys to go back and find it, it was gone. Episode 67 of the car was wiped from some records, but I found it in this location, which I'm not going to tell them. You're going to have to write me, look me up. I'm not going to tell you where I found it at, but I found a one that we can get it. So we have to understand that those people who want to control what we think, we're going to control what we exposed to, trying to tell us it was not right. The car movement, the show was right. It's about us, but they're going to tell us and take it off. No, the devil is a liar. I'm so glad that there's mediums like YouTube and others where we can still speak our voice and love on people. So I want you to know right now, whatever you do, take this back. I love my white brothers and sisters, and I mean it in the very real sense. Ask my brother David Goss. Go look him up and ask him. And you'll understand that I got a white brother for real, and I love him with my whole heart, mind, and soul. But I know I have some biological brothers and sisters that I need to probably come in contact with. And we need to have a discussion. We need to deal with this issue of slavery. I don't know how we're going to rectify it, but it needs to be reconciled. Until that divide is dealt with, until that time, we're going to have more and more and more and more stuff. I think I said enough. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to do my other class in just a moment. But listen, I love you with the love of all humanity. I just love you. I love all humanity. I'm about life. I don't know where this came from, but I like it. Welcome home. Welcome home to yourself. Welcome home to your country. Let's do this thing and do it right. Keep your hands clean and your heart pure. You cannot go wrong with that. This is Pastor Omar and Muhammad. I do endorse this message.